Hello, and welcome to Christmas Stories for Sleep. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight, ready to drift off into peaceful dreams filled with the magic of the holiday season. Tonight, I have a special story for you, a heartwarming Christmas romance that will carry you gently into sleep. So make yourself comfortable, pull up your softest blanket, adjust your pillow just right, and take a deep, calming breath. Let the stresses of the day melt away like snowflakes on warm skin. Our story tonight is called Mistletoe and Manuscripts, a tale of two writers who discover that sometimes the best stories are the ones we live, not just the ones we write. It takes place at a cozy lodge in Vermont, where the snow falls softly and the fire crackles warmly, where Christmas magic is always in the air. As you listen, let your breathing slow and your mind quiet. There's nowhere you need to be right now except here, in this moment, ready to be transported to a winter wonderland where love always finds a way. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin our journey to Pine Grove Lodge, where Eleanor Vance is about to discover that the best Christmas gift might just be the one she never thought to wish for. Eleanor Vance gripped the steering wheel of her rental car with white knuckles, squinting through the relentless cascade of snowflakes that danced across her windshield. The GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago, somewhere between the last gas station and what she assumed was the middle of nowhere, Vermont. Her publisher's assistant had promised the Pine Grove Lodge would be easy to find and just off the main road. Eleanor was beginning to suspect the assistant had never actually driven in a New England snowstorm. "Holiday inspiration retreat," she muttered, cranking up the defroster another notch. "More like holiday imprisonment." Through the swirling white, she finally spotted a wooden sign adorned with painted pine branches and twinkling lights, Pine Grove Lodge, where Christmas magic comes to life. Eleanor rolled her eyes but felt a flutter of relief. At least she wouldn't freeze to death in her car, which would make for terrible publicity. A best-selling romance author found frozen in Vermont, final manuscript still unwritten. The lodge materialized through the snow like something from one of her own novels, all warm golden light spilling from windows, smoke curling from a stone chimney, and enough Christmas decorations to stock a small department store. Garland wrapped around every pillar of the wraparound porch, and no fewer than 6 Christmas trees were visible through various windows. Eleanor parked and sat for a moment, steeling herself. 3 months. That's how long it had been since she'd written anything worth reading. 3 months of staring at a blank page while her editor sent increasingly panicked emails about deadlines and Christmas release schedules. Margaret Chen didn't panic often, which made her current state all the more alarming. 2 weeks, Margaret had said, practically shoving the retreat brochure into Eleanor's hands. 2 weeks of Christmas immersion therapy. It worked for Jonathan Kellerman when he had writer's block. "Jonathan Kellerman writes crime thrillers," Eleanor had protested. "And you write romance. So go fall in love with Christmas again." Now, grabbing her suitcase and laptop bag, Eleanor trudged through the ankle-deep snow toward the lodge's entrance. The door bore a massive wreath that probably weighed more than she did, complete with battery-operated lights and a red velvet bow. She pushed through and was immediately assaulted by the scent of cinnamon, pine, and what had to be freshly baked gingerbread. The lobby looked like Christmas had exploded and then been meticulously organized by someone with an unlimited decorating budget. A 15-foot tree dominated one corner, its branches heavy with ornaments that looked handcrafted. Garland swooped along the exposed wooden beams, and a fire crackled in a stone fireplace tall enough to walk into. Somewhere, Bing Crosby was dreaming of a white Christmas. "Welcome to Pine Grove Lodge!" Eleanor jumped, nearly dropping her laptop bag. A woman who could have stepped out of a Vermont tourism brochure beamed at her from behind the registration desk. She wore a green sweater with an embroidered reindeer and earrings shaped like tiny Christmas trees. "You must be Eleanor Vance. We've been expecting you." "I'm Holly. Yes, really, and yes, I've heard all the jokes." Holly's laugh tinkled like sleigh bells. "You're the last to arrive for the retreat. Everyone else is in the gingerbread parlor for our welcome reception. I'm supposed to check in first." "Oh, don't worry about that now. Let me take your bags. You don't want to miss Liam's opening remarks. He's our retreat facilitator, and he's absolutely wonderful." so passionate about storytelling and the magic of Christmas narratives. Holly was already whisking Eleanor's suitcase away. "Through those doors, dear. I'll have your things sent up to the Snowflake Suite." Before Eleanor could protest that she needed a moment to compose herself, to prepare for 2 weeks of forced Christmas cheer, Holly had disappeared. Taking a deep breath that tasted of cinnamon and pine, Eleanor smoothed her black wool coat and pushed through the indicated doors. The gingerbread parlor lived up to its name. The walls were decorated with oversized gingerbread house facades, complete with candy cane columns and frosting trim. About a dozen people sat in a semicircle of plush armchairs, all facing a man who stood before the room's fireplace, gesticulating enthusiastically. Eleanor's heart stopped. No, 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 no. She knew that rangy build, that tousled dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it one too many times. She knew the way he planted his feet when he was about to launch into a passionate argument, knew the exact angle of his jaw when he was feeling particularly self-righteous. Liam Kincaid, of all the Christmas retreats in all the lodges in all of Vermont, she had to walk into his. The beauty of holiday storytelling lies not in rigid formulas or market-tested plots, he was saying, his voice carrying that same fervent conviction she remembered from their online arguments. It's about capturing the authentic magic of human connection, the way Christmas strips away our defenses and reveals what truly matters. Someone had cleared their throat. Loudly. Liam's gaze swung toward the door, toward her, and Eleanor watched the exact moment recognition dawned. His eyes, green, she noted with the part of her brain that cataloged details for later use, widened fractionally. His hand, raised mid-gesture, froze. "Ah," he said after a beat that lasted approximately 17 years, "our final retreat participant has arrived." Every head in the room swiveled toward Eleanor. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and did what she did best. She put on a performance. "My apologies for the interruption," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "The weather was rather determined to keep me away." Eleanor Vance. Liam said her name like it was a particularly complex equation he was trying to solve. "Welcome to Pine Grove Lodge." They stared at each other across the room, and Eleanor could practically feel the other participants picking up on the tension. One woman actually leaned forward in her chair, as if watching a particularly interesting scene in a drama. "Do you two know each other?" asked a man in a Santa red sweater. "We're acquainted," Eleanor said carefully. Liam's laugh was short and lacking any real humor. "Miss Vance and I have had several spirited discussions about the art of storytelling. Online." Spirited discussions. That was one way to describe their very public Twitter feud that had entertainment bloggers gleefully taking sides. It had started innocently enough. Liam had written a blog post about how commercial Christmas romances were soulless cash grabs that reduced the holiday to capitalist propaganda. Eleanor, who had built her career on those very romances, had felt compelled to respond. Things had escalated from there. "How wonderful!" Holly appeared at Eleanor's elbow like a Christmas elf. "There's nothing like a good literary debate to get the creative juices flowing. Eleanor, why don't you take that seat there? Yes, perfect." And Liam can continue his welcome address. The only empty chair, naturally, was directly in front of Liam. Eleanor sat, crossing her legs and folding her hands in her lap, projecting an air of complete composure she didn't feel. Liam cleared his throat. "Right. As I was saying, this retreat is about rediscovering the authentic heart of holiday storytelling. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll work together," his gaze flickered to Eleanor, "to strip away the commercial veneer and find the true magic of Christmas narratives." "Will we be discussing market viability at all?" Eleanor couldn't help herself. "Some of us do need to make a living from our writing." A muscle ticked in Liam's jaw. "Of course. Though I'd argue that the best stories, the ones that truly resonate with readers, come from a place of authenticity rather than market research." "Authenticity doesn't pay rent," Eleanor said sweetly, "and cynicism doesn't touch hearts," Liam countered. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. Holly clapped her hands together. "What passion! This is exactly the kind of energy we want to channel into our writing. Now, who's ready for hot chocolate and our first icebreaker activity? As the group began to rise and mill about, Eleanor found herself face to face with Liam. Up close, she could see he'd grown a beard since their Twitter photo avatars had last crossed swords. A dark, close-trimmed thing that made him look like he'd stepped out of a Vermont lifestyle magazine. He wore a green Henley that matched his eyes and jeans that had seen actual wear, not the artificial distressing she was used to seeing in New York. "Eleanor," he said, his voice pitched low. "This is unexpected. You're the facilitator? You?" She kept her own voice down, aware of curious glances from other participants. "I thought you ran a bookstore in Burlington." "I do, but Pine Grove needed someone for their December retreat, and I have opinions about Christmas storytelling." "Oh, I'm well aware of your opinions." His eyes flashed. "Look, we're both professionals. We can handle 2 weeks in the same lodge without recreating the War of the Roses." "Of course," Eleanor agreed, though privately she was already calculating how quickly she could get back to her car. Writer's block was bad, but 2 weeks of Liam Kincaid's sanctimonious lectures about authentic storytelling might actually kill her. "Wonderful," he said, though his smile suggested he found the situation anything but. "Holly will show you the activity room. We're doing a Christmas memory exercise. Let me guess. We share our most magical Christmas memory to remind us why the holiday matters. Actually, we share our worst Christmas memory and then reimagine it with a happy ending. It's about transformation and the power of narrative to heal." Eleanor blinked. That was actually not terrible. "Oh," she said. "Yeah." He turned to go, then paused. "For what it's worth, I did read your last Christmas book. The December Proposal." Here it came. The critique, the judgment, "it made my mother cry." Happy tears. She called me at midnight to tell me about the scene with the snow globe. Before Eleanor could process this information, Liam was striding away, leaving her standing in the gingerbread parlor with her mouth slightly open and her worldview slightly tilted. "Eleanor!" Holly materialized again. "Come along, dear. You'll want to get some hot chocolate before we start. Mrs. Brennan makes it from scratch, with real Swiss chocolate and a secret ingredient that'll change your life." Eleanor allowed herself to be swept along, past garland-wrapped doorways and more twinkling lights than seemed strictly necessary. The activity room turned out to be another impossibly cozy space, with overstuffed chairs arranged in a circle and windows that looked out onto a snow-covered garden. Strings of lights created a canopy overhead. And yes, there was another Christmas tree, this one decorated entirely with vintage ornaments. She accepted a mug of hot chocolate, which did indeed taste like liquid happiness, and found herself seated between a cheerful retired teacher named Ruth and a nervous-looking young man who introduced himself as an aspiring screenwriter. "Isn't this magical?" Ruth sighed contentedly, like we're inside a snow globe. Eleanor took a sip of her hot chocolate and tried not to think about snow globes, or Liam's mother crying over her book, or the way the firelight had caught the gold flecks in Liam's green eyes. "All right, everyone," Liam said, settling into a chair directly across from her. Because of course he did. "Before we begin our memory exercise, I want to talk about why we're here. Each of you came to this retreat for a reason. Maybe you're blocked. Maybe you're uninspired. Maybe you've lost touch with why you started writing in the first place." His gaze found Eleanor's and held it. The next 2 weeks aren't about following formulas or meeting market expectations. They're about rediscovering wonder, about remembering that stories, especially Christmas stories, have the power to transform, to heal, to bring light into darkness. But what if the market wants formulas? The question came from the aspiring screenwriter. What if authentic doesn't sell? Liam leaned forward. Then we find a way to be authentic within the framework. We subvert expectations. We surprise readers. We give them what they didn't know they wanted. "Easy to say when you're not dependent on royalty checks," Eleanor murmured. "What was that, Miss Vance?" "I said it's easy to prioritize artistic integrity when you're not dependent on royalty checks." She met his gaze steadily. "Some of us have mortgages, contracts, readers who expect certain things from our books. And is meeting those expectations making you happy?" His tone was genuinely curious rather than combative. Is it feeding your creative soul? Eleanor opened her mouth to say yes, of course it was. She loved her career. But the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was, she hadn't felt genuinely excited about her writing in months. Maybe longer, I think, Holly interjected smoothly. This is exactly the kind of question we'll be exploring over the next 2 weeks. Now, who wants to go first with their Christmas memory? As Ruth launched into a story about the Christmas her father came home from Korea, Eleanor found herself stealing glances at Liam. He listened with complete attention, occasionally jotting notes in a leather journal. When Ruth's voice wavered, describing how her father had seemed like a stranger, Liam leaned forward with such genuine empathy that Eleanor felt something twist in her chest. This wasn't the combative blogger who'd called her work paint-by-numbers romance. This was someone who understood the power of stories to matter, to connect, to heal. When it was Eleanor's turn, she found herself telling a story she'd never shared publicly, about the Christmas when she was 12 and her parents had fought all. Through dinner, how she'd escaped to her room and written her first complete story, a tale about a girl who could freeze time on Christmas Eve and make everything perfect. "And what happened to that story?" Liam asked softly. "I still have it, in a box in my closet. Do you ever read it?" "No." "Why not?" Eleanor considered lying, but something about the warmth of the room, the taste of chocolate on her tongue, the way everyone was looking at her with such openness, made her tell the truth. "Because that girl believed stories could fix things, change things, and I'm afraid if I read it now, I'll remember what it felt like to believe that." The room was quiet except for the pop and hiss of the fire. "Maybe," Liam said finally, "that's exactly why you should read it." Eleanor woke to the kind of pristine silence that only comes with heavy snowfall. Her room, the snowflake suite as promised, was a confection of white linens, pale blue accents, and yes, snowflake-patterned everything. But it was tasteful, she had to admit, in a New England bed-and-breakfast sort of way. She reached for her phone, then remembered there was no cell service, no emails from her editor, no Twitter notifications, no desperate texts from her assistant, just silence and snow. Her laptop sat on the desk by the window, accusingly blank. She'd promised herself she'd try to write after dinner last night, but the combination of jet lag, altitude, and emotional whiplash from seeing Liam had sent her straight to bed instead. A knock at her door interrupted her self-recrimination. "Eleanor? It's Holly. Breakfast is in 15 minutes, but I thought you might like some coffee first." Eleanor opened the door to find Holly holding a tray with a French press and a delicate china cup. "You're an angel," Eleanor said, meaning it. "Oh, honey, I just know the look of a writer who needs caffeine before human interaction." Holly bustled in and set the tray on the small table by the window. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" Eleanor looked out at the winter wonderland beyond the frosted glass. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed. Every branch bore its weight of snow, and the early morning sun made everything sparkle like diamond dust. "It's very picturesque," she admitted. "Liam loves mornings like this. Says they make him believe in magic again." Holly poured the coffee with practiced ease. "He's quite something, our Liam." Eleanor took a grateful sip of coffee, hoping her non-committal sound would end this line of conversation. "You know, he was so excited when he heard you were coming to the retreat." Eleanor nearly choked on her coffee. "Excited? Well, excited might be the wrong word. Energized? He pulled out all your books from the store's inventory, said he wanted to reread them before you arrived, to prepare his criticisms, no doubt." Holly gave her a look that was far too knowing for someone wearing reindeer earrings. "You might be surprised. Now, breakfast is in the Winterberry dining room. That's downstairs. Turn left at the grandfather clock. We're having partners assigned for today's activities." After Holly left, Eleanor dressed carefully. She'd packed mostly comfortable clothes, soft sweaters, worn jeans, the kind of things she wore when writing at home. But now, knowing Liam was here, she found herself reaching for her armor, a cashmere turtleneck the color of fresh cream, dark jeans that fit perfectly, boots that added 2 inches to her height. She pulled her hair back in a low ponytail and added the minimum makeup that would make her look polished rather than trying. The Winterberry dining room smelled like heaven. Bacon, cinnamon rolls, fresh bread, and more coffee. The other retreat participants were already scattered around several small tables, chatting over loaded plates. Eleanor spotted an empty seat next to Ruth and made a beeline for it, but Holly intercepted her. "Oh, Eleanor. Perfect timing. We're doing assigned seating this morning to mix things up. You're at table 3 with Liam." Of course she was. Liam sat at a small table by the window, 2 plates already waiting. He was wearing a navy sweater that looked hand-knit and worn jeans, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. He stood when she approached, a gesture so unexpected she nearly stumbled. "Good morning," he said, pulling out her chair. "Thank you." She sat, eyeing the plates. "You already ordered for me?" "Holly did, actually. Said you look like a sweet breakfast person rather than savory." He paused. "There's also bacon if you want some of mine." Eleanor looked down at her plate. French toast stuffed with what appeared to be mascarpone and cranberries, dusted with powdered sugar, and drizzled with maple syrup. It looked like something from her own books, the kind of breakfast a heroine would eat while falling in love. "This is perfect, actually." They ate in silence for a few moments. Eleanor found herself sneaking glances at Liam as he methodically worked through his eggs and bacon. He ate like someone who enjoyed food but didn't fetishize it, and he'd been right about the French toast. It was exactly what she'd have ordered for herself. "So," he said finally, setting down his fork, "Holly tells me we're partners for today's activity, which is a trip to the Christmas market in town. We're supposed to find 3 objects that could inspire a holiday story and then present them to the group tonight. How very arts and crafts." "You don't approve?" Eleanor sighed. "It's not that. It's just, I've written 12 Christmas romances. I know every possible permutation of holiday story. What's a Christmas market going to show me that I haven't already used? Maybe that's the problem." "Excuse me?" Liam leaned back in his chair, studying her. "When was the last time you went to a Christmas market just to enjoy it? Not for research, not mining for plot points, but just to be there?" Eleanor opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She couldn't remember. "That's what I thought." His voice was gentler than she expected. "Look, I know you think I'm some pretentious literary snob who doesn't understand commercial fiction. You did call my books soulless cash grabs." He winced, that was. Poorly phrased. "You think?" I'd had too much wine and had just finished reading a particularly bad Christmas anthology. Your book happened to be the example I reached for, but it wasn't really about your work specifically. It felt pretty specific when you quoted entire passages to mock. I know. I'm sorry." He met her eyes directly. "That was unfair and honestly mean-spirited. Your books bring joy to millions of people. My mother has read Nun December Proposal 4 times. You mentioned that yesterday. Did I mention she made my father read it too? And that he also cried at the snow globe scene?" Despite herself, Eleanor felt her lips twitch. "No, you left that part out." "He's a retired Marine. He once fixed a broken bone with duct tape and a stick, but apparently, when Charlotte finds the snow globe with her grandmother's picture in it," Liam shrugged, "waterworks." They finished breakfast in more comfortable silence. Eleanor found herself noticing things. The way Liam automatically refilled her coffee cup, how he saved the best bite of his meal for last, the small scar on his left hand that looked like it might have a story behind it. An hour later, they were bundled into Liam's truck, heading into town. He drove with the easy confidence of someone who'd navigated snowy roads his whole life, and Eleanor allowed herself to relax into the heated seats. "So," she said as they passed a particularly aggressive display of lawn decorations, "you run a bookstore?" "The Book Nook on Church Street. Started it 5 years ago when I got tired of corporate life." "You were in corporate? Marketing, if you can believe it? 10 years of selling things I didn't believe in to people who didn't need them." He glanced at her. "Is that judgment I see on your face? Surprise, maybe. You just seem so earnest, idealistic, naive about the realities of capitalism. I was going to say comfortable in your own skin." That seemed to catch him off guard. "Oh, well, It took a while to get here. The town of Pine Grove looked like a Christmas card come to life. Every storefront was decorated. The lamp posts were wrapped in garland and ribbon, and the town square had been transformed into a winter market, complete with wooden stalls and twinkling lights strung overhead. "It's like a movie set," Eleanor said, as Liam parked. "That's actually not far off. 3 Hallmark movies have filmed here in the last 5 years." "Really? Really?" "My store was in the background of one. Sales went up 30% after it aired." He cut the engine and turned to her. "So maybe I should be nicer to commercial Christmas romance. Maybe you should." The market was bustling despite the cold. Vendors sold everything from hand-knit scarves to maple candy, ornaments to fresh wreaths. The air smelled of wood smoke and cinnamon donuts, and somewhere a brass quartet was playing carols. "Where do we start?" Eleanor asked, pulling on her gloves. "Wherever calls to you. We've got 3 hours and 3 objects to find." They wandered separately at first, Eleanor gravitating toward the craft stalls, while Liam disappeared into a tent selling used books. She found herself relaxing, letting the atmosphere wash over her. A small girl tugged on her coat, asking if she was an ice princess. Because of her white outfit, an elderly couple shared their hot cider with her, while telling her about their 60-year love story that began at this very market. "Found anything?" Liam appeared at her elbow, carrying a paper bag. "Not yet." "You?" He pulled out a small leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Found this in the book tent. Look." He opened it carefully, revealing pages of handwritten recipes. "It's from 1947, someone's grandmother's cookie recipes, but read the margins." Eleanor looked closer. In faded ink, someone had made notes. "Johnny's favorite. Make extra. Sarah wants these for her wedding. Remember to hide some from Robert. He'll eat them all." "There's a whole family story in these margins," she said softly. "That's what I thought. Stories within stories." They continued through the market together now, debating the narrative potential of various objects. Eleanor found herself laughing at Liam's increasingly ridiculous suggestions. A rubber chicken wearing a Santa hat, a painting of dogs playing poker in Christmas sweaters. "Oh!" She stopped suddenly at a stall selling vintage ornaments. "Look at this." It was a snow globe, but not the pristine, mass-produced kind. This one was old, the base tarnished silver. The scene inside slightly clouded. A tiny couple danced in the snow, and when Eleanor shook it, the snow fell in slow, dreamy swirls. "It's broken," the vendor said apologetically. "The music box doesn't work anymore. I can give you a discount." "I'll take it," Eleanor said quickly. "The broken music box is part of the story." Liam was watching her with an odd expression. "Like the snow globe in your book?" "No. Well, maybe, but different." She cradled it carefully. "This one has history, mystery." What song did it play? Who were the dancers meant to represent? Their third object found them, in a way. They were passing a stall selling handmade soaps when a golden retriever bounded up, carrying a bright red mitten in its mouth. "Chester!" "No! Drop it!" A harried-looking woman chased after the dog. "I'm so sorry. He's obsessed with stealing mittens." The dog, clearly pleased with himself, dropped the mitten at Eleanor's feet and sat, tail wagging expectantly. "He only does that with people he really likes," the woman said, then did a double take. "Oh my goodness. Are you Eleanor Vance?" "The writer?" Eleanor admitted she was, and suddenly she was signing a receipt, a napkin, and listening to how the woman's book club had read all her novels. "They got me through my divorce," the woman confided. "Reminded me that happy endings were still possible." After she left, Eleanor realized Liam had been very quiet. "What?" "Nothing. Just, that was nice. Seeing how much your work means to people." "But?" "No but." He picked up the red mitten Chester had abandoned. "I think we have our third object, the story of a matchmaking dog who steals winter wear." They made their way back to the truck, laden with their finds and several impulse purchases. Eleanor had been unable to resist a pair of hand-knit mittens that matched her coat perfectly. "You want to know what I realized?" Liam said as they drove back to the lodge. "What's that?" "I've been an ass." Eleanor turned in her seat to look at him fully. "Is this where you completely reverse your position on commercial fiction to try to get in my good graces?" No, this is where I admit that I've been so focused on defending what I think literature should be that I forgot the most important thing, which is stories that make people feel less alone in the world have value. Period. Doesn't matter if they're literary or commercial, highbrow or accessible. He pulled into the lodge's driveway. Your books do that. They give people hope. And I mocked that because, honestly, because I was jealous. Jealous? Of what? He parked but didn't move to get out. You know exactly who you are as a writer. You know your audience, your voice, your purpose. I've been running a bookstore for 5 years, talking about authentic storytelling, and I haven't finished a single manuscript. You're a writer? Trying to be. Failing to be. Hence, teaching retreats about the craft I can't seem to practice. Eleanor studied his profile, the way his jaw tensed with vulnerability. What kind of stories do you want to write? Would you laugh if I said Christmas stories? Liam Kincaid wants to write Christmas stories? See, you're laughing. I'm not. But she was smiling. I'm just surprised. After everything you've said about the commercialization of the holiday, I know. But there's something about Christmas stories. The good ones, anyway. They're about transformation and redemption, and choosing love over fear. They're about believing in possibility. He finally looked at her. Like your books, actually. The ones I so pompously dismissed. They sat in the warm cab of the truck, snow beginning to fall again outside, and Eleanor felt something shift between them. The competitive edge, the defensive walls, they were still there but softer somehow. I have a confession too, she said. Yeah? I haven't written anything in 3 months. Not a word. That's why I'm here. Writer's block? Writer's terror. What if I've told all the stories I have in me? What if I'm just recycling the same plot with different character names? What if you were right and I am just painting by numbers? I wasn't right. But what if you were? What if I've forgotten how to write something real? Liam reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. Then I guess we'll figure it out together. 2 blocked writers stumbling toward authenticity, in a Christmas market, with a broken snow globe and a matchmaking dog. Eleanor laughed, surprising herself. When you put it that way, it sounds like a story. Maybe it is. They gathered their packages and headed inside, where Holly was waiting with hot chocolate and excited questions about their finds. But Eleanor found herself thinking less about the objects they'd found and more about the unexpected discovery of the day. Liam Kincaid wasn't her enemy. He might, in fact, be exactly the ally she needed. I cannot believe you've never made a gingerbread house. Eleanor looked up from the pile of gingerbread pieces scattered across the table in front of her. Is that really so shocking? Not everyone had idyllic Vermont childhoods, Liam. It was their 3rd day at the retreat, and Holly had decided that nothing inspired Christmas creativity quite like architectural confectionery. The gingerbread parlor had been transformed into a construction zone, with tables covered in candies, bowls of royal icing, and enough gingerbread to build a small village. It's not about Vermont, Liam said, carefully piping icing along the edge of a wall. It's about Christmas traditions. Didn't your family do anything special? Eleanor considered this as she attempted to make 2 pieces of gingerbread stick together. We traveled. My parents thought experiencing different cultures' winter celebrations was more educational than decorating cookies. That sounds lonely, Eleanor supplied. It was. Do you know how hard it is to feel Christmas magic in a hotel in Bangkok, no matter how many lights they string up? Is that why you write Christmas romances? Creating the traditions you never had? The question was too perceptive by half. Eleanor focused on her collapsing gingerbread wall. Maybe. Or maybe I just like the reliable emotional arc. Meet cute, conflict, resolution, happy ending. No surprises. No surprises sounds terrible, says the man who probably had matching family pajamas and hot cocoa every Christmas Eve. We did, actually. Liam grinned at her expression. Red flannel. My mom made us wear them for photos until I was 22. Of course she did. Eleanor finally got her walls to stand and felt ridiculously proud. What other Hallmark movie traditions did the Kincaid family observe? Let's see. Tree cutting the day after Thanksgiving. Cookie decorating party for the whole neighborhood. Caroling, yes, actual door-to-door caroling. Ice skating on Morrison Pond. Christmas Eve services at the White Church on the Green. He paused in his icing application. And before you mock, I wasn't going to mock. You were thinking it. I was thinking it sounds nice, Eleanor admitted. Consistent. Safe. Like a story where you know the ending. But knowing the ending doesn't mean the journey isn't worth taking. Their eyes met across the table, and Eleanor felt that increasingly familiar flutter in her chest. 3 days of forced proximity had worn down her defenses. She'd learned that Liam hummed while he worked, that he took his coffee black but his hot chocolate with an embarrassing amount of marshmallows, that he dog-eared books a sin but treated them like treasured friends nonetheless. Your roof is sliding. She jerked her attention back to her gingerbread house, which was indeed listing dramatically to one side. Oh, for the love of... Here. Liam came around the table, bringing his icing bag. You need more support on the corners. May I? She gestured helplessly at her architectural disaster. Please. He leaned in close, steadying her walls with one hand while piping precise lines of icing with the other. Eleanor caught the scent of his soap, something woodsy and warm, and found herself studying the concentration on his face. There, he said softly. Hold it for a minute while it sets. They stood there, both holding the gingerbread house, and Eleanor was acutely aware of how close they were. Close enough to see the gold flecks in his green eyes. Close enough to notice the small scar on his chin she'd wondered about. You two need a room? Ruth called out cheerfully from the next table, and Eleanor jerked back so quickly she nearly sent the house tumbling again. We're fine, she said, her voice slightly too high. Just architectural consultation. Liam returned to his side of the table. And was that a flush on his cheeks, or just the warmth of the room? So, Holly announced, clapping her hands, while your house is dry, let's talk about tomorrow's field trip. Collective groaning from the screenwriter Marcus, who'd already been on 2 inspirational outings that week. Now, Holly continued, undeterred. This one's special. We're going to the Morristown Christmas Tree Farm for their annual Tradition Day. Hot cider, sleigh rides, and, she paused dramatically, the wishing tree ceremony. Wishing tree? Eleanor couldn't help but ask. Local tradition, Liam explained. People write wishes on ribbons and tie them to a special tree. Legend says if you make your wish with a pure heart on the winter solstice, it'll come true by next Christmas. That's tomorrow? It is indeed, Holly beamed. And partners will be sharing a sleigh, so I hope you're all getting cozy with your assigned buddies. Eleanor looked at Liam, who shrugged. Hope you don't mind sleigh rides. I've never been on one. You've never... He shook his head. We really need to work on your Christmas tradition education. Is that what we're calling it? What would you call it? Before Eleanor could answer, her gingerbread house chose that moment to collapse entirely, walls caving in like a sugary sinkhole. She stared at the wreckage. It's a metaphor, she said finally. For? My career. My creativity. Your need to let other people help sometimes. Liam was already reaching for fresh gingerbread pieces. Come on, we'll build it again. Together this time. And they did. Liam provided the structural engineering while Eleanor focused on decoration. Their second attempt was less ambitious but more stable, and she found herself genuinely enjoying the process of selecting candy shingles and piping window frames. You know, Liam said as they worked, there's a theory that creativity flows better when your hands are busy with something repetitive, like decorating cookies or building gingerbread houses. Exactly. It's why I knit. Eleanor nearly dropped her gumdrop. You knit? Is that so surprising? Yes? No? I don't know. She studied him. What do you knit? Scarves, mostly. Some hats. I'm working on a sweater, but sleeves are proving challenging. Of course you knit. Probably while reading Proust and listening to NPR. Audiobooks, actually. And sometimes terrible reality TV. Now you're just trying to seem relatable. Is it working? Eleanor realized she was smiling. Maybe a little. They were interrupted by Holly announcing the judging. Their house, while structurally sound, couldn't compete with Ruth's Victorian mansion or Marcus's modern architectural marvel. But Eleanor found she didn't care about winning. She was too distracted by the easy rhythm she and Liam had found, the way they'd started anticipating each other's moves. After dinner, the group gathered in the main lounge for what Holly called story circle time. The furniture had been arranged around the massive fireplace, and Eleanor claimed a corner of a love seat, expecting to have it to herself. But Liam settled next to her, close enough that their knees almost touched. "Tonight," Holly announced, "we're going to try something different. Speed storytelling. I'll give you a prompt, and you have to tell a complete story in under 2 minutes. Who wants to go first?" The exercise was silly but surprisingly fun. The prompts ranged from Santa's GPS breaks down to a Christmas tree develops consciousness, and everyone threw themselves into it with varying degrees of enthusiasm and skill. When it was Eleanor's turn, the prompt was a couple gets snowed in on Christmas Eve. "Oh, that's too easy for a romance writer," someone called out. Eleanor felt the familiar freeze of performance anxiety. This was why she wrote rather than told stories. The safety of revision, of perfecting each word before anyone saw it. "Once upon a time," she began, then stopped. Started again. "There was a woman who planned everything, every moment, every word, every feeling. She had her whole life outlined like one of her novels. But on Christmas Eve, a blizzard trapped her in a small cabin with a man who never planned anything. She could feel Liam's attention like a physical weight. She hated him at first. Hated his easy laugh and the way he made hot chocolate without measuring, and how he could sit in silence without needing to fill it. Hated that he made her homemade bread and didn't need praise for it. Hated how he looked at her like he could see past all her careful construction." The room had gone very quiet. But somewhere between the 4th cup of cocoa and the 100th game of cards, she realized she'd stopped planning. Stopped performing. The snow had trapped her, but somehow she felt free. And when he kissed her at midnight, with the snow still falling and the world stopped around them, she realized the best stories were the ones you couldn't outline. The ones that surprised you. The ones that— "Time!" Holly called. Eleanor blinked, coming back to herself. Everyone was staring at her, and she felt exposed, like she'd revealed too much. "That was beautiful," Ruth said softly. "Really lovely," others echoed. Eleanor risked a glance at Liam. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read, something intense and uncertain. "Liam, you're next," Holly said brightly. "Your prompt is, 'The Christmas gift that wasn't meant for you.'" Liam stood, running a hand through his hair. "Right. Okay. So there's this guy, and he's been carrying around this gift for years. Not a physical gift, but something he's been waiting to give to the right person. The problem is, he's not sure it's worth giving. It's not perfect, kind of worn around the edges, might fall apart if you look at it too closely." He wasn't looking at Eleanor, but she felt like he was speaking directly to her. Then one Christmas, he meets someone who makes him want to be brave enough to give it. But he's terrified they'll see all the places where it's been mended, all the imperfect seams, so he keeps waiting for the right moment, the perfect moment. Only, Holly prompted when he paused. Only perfect moments don't exist. And maybe the gift was never meant to be perfect. Maybe it was just meant to be given. He sat back down, and his knee definitely pressed against Eleanor's this time. The evening wound down with more stories, hot cider, and cookies. Eleanor found herself lingering as others drifted off to their rooms, not quite ready to break whatever spell had been woven around the fireplace. "Walk?" Liam asked quietly. She nodded. They bundled into coats and stepped out onto the lodge's back porch. The night was crystalline cold, the sky crazy with stars, their breath clouded in the air, and somewhere in the distance an owl called. "I should apologize," Eleanor said. "For?" "The Twitter thing. I was reactive. We both were." "No, you stated an opinion about books. I made it personal. Called you a pretentious hipster who wouldn't recognize real emotion if it was shelved between Proust and Tolstoy." Liam's laugh echoed in the cold air. "That was a pretty good line, actually. I workshopped it before posting." "Of course you did." He leaned against the porch railing. I meant what I said earlier, about being jealous. Your books, they matter to people. That's not nothing. But they're not real. They're fantasy. Nobody falls in love like that. Like what? Perfect meet-cutes. Obstacles that conveniently resolve. Snow that falls at exactly the right moment. She gestured at the clear sky. Life isn't a romance novel. Maybe not. But maybe that's why we need them. To remind us that love is worth hoping for, fighting for. He turned to face her fully. Your story tonight. Was that fiction? Eleanor's heart stuttered. Of course. It was just a prompt. Was it? They stood there in the cold, the question hanging between them like frozen breath. Eleanor wanted to deflect, to joke, to retreat behind her walls. But something about the darkness and the stars and the way Liam was looking at her made truth feel like the only option. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what's fiction anymore. Eleanor, I should go in. Early morning tomorrow. Sleigh rides and wishing trees and all that Christmas magic. She was babbling, backing toward the door. Good night, Liam. Good night, Eleanor. She fled to her room, heart racing like she'd run a marathon. Her laptop sat accusingly on the desk, but for the first time in months, Eleanor felt like she might have something to write. Not her next contracted Christmas romance, but something new. Something that scared her. Something real. She opened a blank document and typed, Once upon a time, a woman who planned everything got trapped in a snowstorm with a man who made her want to throw away the outline. Then she deleted it. Some stories, she was beginning to realize, needed to be lived before they could be written. The sleigh was smaller than Eleanor had imagined. Cozy, Holly chirped, as she ushered Eleanor and Liam toward the painted red conveyance. Don't worry, there are plenty of blankets. Cozy was one word for it. The sleigh was built for romance, with a single bench seat that would require them to sit pressed together from shoulder to knee. Other retreat participants were already settling into their assigned sleighs, laughter ringing across the snow-covered fields of the Morristown Christmas tree farm. After you, Liam said, offering his hand to help her up. Eleanor climbed in, acutely aware of every point of contact as Liam settled beside her. He spread a thick plaid blanket over their laps, and she caught herself holding her breath. You okay? He asked quietly. You've been jumpy all morning. She had been. Ever since their conversation on the porch, Eleanor felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. She'd barely slept, caught between wanting to write and wanting to run. I'm fine. Just not used to this. Sleigh rides? Any of it. She gestured vaguely at the farm, the other couples, the whole Christmas perfection of it all. I feel like I'm in one of my own books. Is that bad? I don't know yet. The driver clicked to the horses, and they were off, gliding across the snow with the soft jingle of bells. The morning sun made everything sparkle, and Eleanor found herself relaxing despite her nerves. There was something hypnotic about the rhythm of the horses, the whisper of runners on snow. Look! Liam pointed to a stand of evergreens, cardinals, a flash of red against the green, bright as ornaments. Eleanor watched them flit from branch to branch, and without thinking, she shifted closer to Liam to follow their movement. My grandmother used to say cardinals were messages from heaven, she said. Loved ones letting you know they're okay. Do you believe that? I want to. It's a nice story. Sometimes nice stories are enough. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the sleigh path winding through groves of Christmas trees in various stages of growth. Families were already out selecting their perfect tree, children racing between the rows, parents debating height and fullness. Did you ever do this? Eleanor asked. Choose a tree with your family? Every year. Dad would want the tallest one. Mom would worry about the ceiling, and my sister and I would find the scraggiest Charlie Brown tree and insist it needed love. Who won? We compromised. Got a reasonable tree for the living room and the Charlie Brown tree for the kids' playroom. Dad would grumble about having to decorate 2 trees, but he always made sure the scrappy one got the best ornaments. Eleanor smiled at the image. That's really lovely. What about your family? Any tree traditions I should know about? We had a silver aluminum tree one year. Very modern, very sophisticated. I hated it. She pulled the blanket higher. I used to sneak down to the lobby of whatever hotel we were in and sit by their tree instead. The doorman at the Ritz in Paris let me help decorate one year, taught me how to make paper angels. Do you still know how? Probably. Some things you don't forget. We should make some for your suite at the lodge. We? Well, you'll need someone to fold the wings. I'm excellent at wing folding. The sleigh crested a small hill, and suddenly the wishing tree came into view. It was massive, an ancient oak that had somehow survived centuries of New England weather. Its bare branches were already dotted with colorful ribbons, fluttering like prayer flags in the breeze. It's beautiful, Eleanor breathed. Wait until you see it up close. Some of those ribbons are decades old. Families come back every year to add new wishes and see if old ones came true. Do they come true? Liam was quiet for a moment. I tied a wish on there 5 years ago, right before I opened the bookstore. What did you wish for? To find work that mattered, to build something real. He paused, to stop feeling like I was living someone else's life. And did it come true? Parts of it, the store, definitely, the writing. He shrugged. Still working on that. What about the other parts? What other parts? Eleanor knew she was pushing into dangerous territory, but something about the intimacy of the sleigh, the fairy tale setting, made her brave. The parts you didn't mention, the personal wishes. Liam turned to look at her, and the expression in his eyes made her heart skip. Those are still in progress, too. The sleigh pulled to a stop near a cluster of other vehicles. Liam helped her down, his hands lingering on her waist a moment longer than necessary. They joined the group gathering around Holly, who was distributing ribbons and markers. Now remember, Holly said, wishes made with pure intention on the winter solstice have special power. Take your time. Think about what you really want. Eleanor stared at her blank ribbon. What did she want? For her writer's block to end, obviously. For her next book to be a bestseller. For her editor to stop sending worried emails. But standing in the shadow of the ancient tree, those wishes felt small, commercial. Hard to choose? Liam asked. He'd wandered over to stand beside her. I don't know what to wish for, she admitted. Everything I think of feels wrong. Wrong how? Like I'm asking for the wrong things. Success, deadlines, contracts, business wishes, not. She trailed off. Not heart wishes? Is that what you call them? It's what my mom calls them. The things you want in your deepest, quietest moments. The wishes you're almost afraid to speak out loud. Eleanor looked at the tree, at all those ribbons representing hopes and dreams and desperate wants. What if you don't know what your heart wishes are anymore? Then maybe that's your wish. To figure it out. It was so simple, so obvious that Eleanor laughed. Of course you'd say that. What's that supposed to mean? You're very wise, in an annoying, seeing right through people kind of way. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't entirely meant as one. But she was smiling as she wrote on her ribbon, "Find my true story." On your turn, she said, handing him the marker. Liam hesitated, then wrote quickly, shielding the ribbon with his hand. Secret wish? Eleanor teased. The most secret kind. They approached the tree together. Up close, Eleanor could see the wishes were as varied as the people who'd made them. Some ribbons were faded with age, others bright and new. Children scrawled hopes next to elderly handwriting, wishes for health, for love, for forgiveness, for second chances. Where should we tie them? Eleanor asked. Wherever calls to you. She found a spot on a lower branch, near a child's wish for a puppy and an older ribbon that simply said, peace. As she tied her ribbon, she closed her eyes and tried to imagine what finding her true story would feel like. Would it be like coming home, or like setting sail? Would she recognize it when she found it? When she opened her eyes, Liam was watching her with that intense look she was beginning to recognize. What? Nothing. You looked peaceful. I don't think I've seen that before. I don't do peaceful well. Maybe you should practice. Is that your professional opinion, Mr. Retreat Leader? That's my personal observation, Miss Vance. He reached up to tie his own ribbon next to hers, and Eleanor caught a glimpse of his wish to be brave enough. Brave enough for what? She asked softly. He finished his knot before answering. Everything. Writing, living, other things. Mysterious. Says the woman who writes romance but claims not to believe in it. I never said I don't believe in it. No? They were standing very close under the tree, close enough that Eleanor could see her breath mingling with his in the cold air. I believe in it for other people, for characters. For my readers who send me letters about finding love after reading my books. She looked up at the ribbons dancing overhead. I'm just not sure I believe in it for me. Why not? Because I'm difficult. Prickly. I plan everything and need to control the narrative, and I've been told by multiple exes that I treat relationships like plot points. Maybe you just haven't found someone who appreciates those things about you. Someone who appreciates that I'm difficult? Someone who sees that you're not difficult, you're specific. There's a difference. Eleanor felt something crack open in her chest. A fissure in the wall she'd built so carefully. Liam, hot cider time, Holly's voice carried across the snow. Everyone back to the barn. The moment broke, and Eleanor wasn't sure if she was relieved or disappointed. They walked back with the group, but she was hyper-aware of Liam beside her, of the wish ribbons they'd left dancing together in the tree. The barn was warm and smelled of apples and cinnamon. Long tables had been set up with crafts, ornament making, cookie decorating, and yes, paper angel folding. Look, Liam said, steering her toward the angel station, wing-folding opportunity. They sat across from each other, and Eleanor found herself teaching him the technique the Parisian doorman had shown her so many years ago. His fingers were surprisingly nimble, and soon they had a small army of paper angels scattered between them. These are actually good, Eleanor said, holding up one of his creations. I'm a man of hidden talents, knitting and angel folding. What else are you hiding? I make excellent French toast. I can quote all of The Princess Bride. I know every word to Bohemian Rhapsody. And, he paused dramatically, I read romance novels. Everyone knows that now. Your mother outed you. No, I mean I really read them. Not just yours. I have opinions about the various tropes. Enemies to lovers. Obviously superior to fake dating. Second chance romance only works if the conflict was believable. And don't get me started on the third act breakup. Eleanor stared at him. You're serious. Completely. Started reading them to understand what I was criticizing. Kept reading because I liked them. The good ones, anyway. Which ones are the good ones? The ones that make you believe, that don't feel paint by numbers, that surprise you even when you know the ending. He met her eyes. The ones like yours. My books are exactly paint by numbers. You said so yourself. I was wrong. I've spent the last week rereading them, and I was completely, utterly wrong. He leaned forward. Do you know what you actually write? You write about women choosing themselves. About love that doesn't require sacrifice of identity. Your heroines fall in love, yes, but they also grow into fuller versions of themselves. That's not paint by numbers. That's revolutionary dressed up in Christmas ribbons. Eleanor blinked hard against the sudden sting in her eyes. Oh, yeah, no one's ever. She stopped. Tried again. My editor says I write escapist fantasy. Escape isn't always about running from reality. Sometimes it's about running toward possibility. They sat there, surrounded by paper angels and the chatter of other retreat participants, and Eleanor felt like she was standing on the edge of that cliff again. But this time, the fall didn't seem quite so terrifying. Liam? Yeah? Thank you for saying that. For seeing that. He reached across the table and touched her hand briefly. Thank you for writing it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activities. They decorated cookies. Liam's looked like abstract art, toured the tree farm, listened to local carolers. But Eleanor kept coming back to that moment in the barn, to the feeling of being truly seen. As the sun set and they prepared to leave, Eleanor found herself reluctant to end the day. Tomorrow was Sunday, their one free day at the retreat, and she wasn't sure what to do with unscheduled time. Hey, Liam said as they waited for the van. "What are you doing tomorrow?" "Nothing planned." "You?" "I was thinking of driving into Burlington. Visit my store, check on things, maybe grab lunch at this place that does amazing soup. Want to come? To Burlington? To see the store? Meet my books. I promise they're well behaved." It was a date. Not a date. A friendly outing between retreat partners. Eleanor knew she should say no, that getting more entangled with Liam was dangerous for her heart and her carefully controlled life. "I'd love to," she heard herself say. His smile was brighter than the Christmas lights strung around the barn. "Great. Pick you up at 10? It's a date." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "I mean, it's a date," he agreed softly. The van ride back to the lodge was quiet, everyone tired from the day's activities. Eleanor sat next to Liam, their shoulders touching, and watched the winter landscape roll by. Her wish ribbon was out there somewhere, dancing in the dark with his, carrying hopes she was only beginning to understand. And to find my true story. Maybe, Eleanor thought, as Liam quietly pointed out constellations through the van window. She was closer than she'd thought. Burlington was dressed for Christmas like a Victorian postcard come to life. Every storefront competed for the most elaborate window display, and Church Street had been transformed into a pedestrian winter wonderland, with twinkling arches overhead and street vendors selling everything from hot pretzels to handmade mittens. "It's like a movie set," Eleanor said as they walked from the parking garage. "Wait until you see it at night. They do this whole light show on the hour." Liam guided her around a patch of ice with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Fair warning, my store is. A lot how. You'll see." The book nook occupied a corner building that had probably been standing since Burlington was founded. Its windows were filled not just with books but with an entire miniature Christmas village, complete with a working train that chugged between stacks of holiday titles. "Oh," Eleanor breathed. "Too much?" "It's perfect." And it was. The door chimed with actual sleigh bells when they entered, and the smell of books and coffee and something indefinably cozy wrapped around her like a hug. Every available surface held books, but organized in a way that felt curated rather than chaotic. Garland wound between the shelves, and tiny lights made everything glow. "Liam," a young woman with purple hair emerged from behind the counter. "You're not supposed to be here. You're on retreat. Just showing my friend around. Eleanor, this is Sage, who apparently thinks she runs the place now." "I do run the place now," Sage said, then turned to Eleanor with wide eyes. "Wait, Eleanor Vance? The Eleanor Vance? Guilty? Oh my God, we have an entire Eleanor Vance display." "Well, we did, but we sold out of a December proposal again yesterday." Sage glared at Liam. "I told you we needed to order more copies." "You said that about 20 books, Liam protested. "Because Christmas is our busy season and someone," another pointed look, "refuses to properly estimate demand." Eleanor found herself charmed by their easy banter. "How long has Sage worked here?" "Since the beginning," Liam said. "She was my first hire, mostly because she wouldn't stop coming in and reorganizing my shelves. They needed reorganizing. You had Virginia Woolf next to vampire fiction, alphabetical by author." "Chaos." Sage shook her head, then grinned at Eleanor. "Want to see your display? Or what's left of it?" They followed Sage to a prominent table near the front window. A hand-lettered sign read Local Author Spotlight, and Eleanor's books were arranged alongside author photos she recognized from her publisher's publicity packet. "Local?" Eleanor asked. "Honorary local," Liam said. "You're Vermont adjacent for 2 weeks. It counts. We've sold over 200 copies of your books this month," Sage added. "Mrs. Morrison bought 10 copies of In Christmas at the Cove for her book club." Eleanor ran her fingers over the familiar covers. Seeing her books here, in Liam's carefully curated space, felt different than seeing them in a chain bookstore. Here, they looked loved. "I should sign some stock for you," she offered. Sage practically squealed. "Would you? That would be amazing. I'll get them from the back." She rushed off, leaving Eleanor and Liam alone among the stacks. "This is really wonderful," Eleanor said, gesturing at the store. "It's exactly what a bookstore should be. It's getting there. Still trying to figure out the balance between what sells and what I think people should read. The Eternal Bookseller's Dilemma. Exactly. He paused. Can I show you something? He led her up a narrow staircase to a second floor she hadn't noticed from outside. This level was quieter, with reading nooks tucked between shelves and comfortable chairs positioned by windows overlooking the street. This is my favorite spot, he said, guiding her to a corner where two wingback chairs faced a window. Between them sat a small table with a chess set. It's perfect, Eleanor said, sinking into one of the chairs. From here, she could watch the Christmas shoppers below while being cocooned in warmth and books. I come up here to write. Or try to write. He settled into the other chair. Mostly I stare at the street and pretend I'm being productive. What are you working on? Promise not to laugh? I never promise that. Fair. He took a breath. It's a Christmas story about a man who inherits a bookstore from an uncle he never knew he had. There's a mysterious journal, a woman who claims the store is rightfully hers, and possibly magical books that recommend themselves to the right readers. That sounds wonderful. It's a mess. I can't figure out if it's magical realism or just straight contemporary. The tone keeps shifting, and I'm pretty sure I've unconsciously stolen the plot from at least 3 different movies. All plots are stolen from somewhere. The trick is making them yours. Eleanor pulled her feet up under her. What's the real conflict? Not the inheritance dispute, the emotional conflict. Liam was quiet for a moment, looking out at the street. He's afraid he doesn't deserve the store, the legacy. He spent his whole life feeling like he doesn't quite fit anywhere, and suddenly he's given this perfect place, this perfect purpose. What if he ruins it? What if he's not enough? Oh, Eleanor said softly. That's your story. The fear of not being enough. Maybe. No maybe about it. That's what will make readers connect. Not the magical books or the inheritance drama, but that core fear we all carry. She leaned forward. What does he really want? Not the store. What does he want? To belong somewhere, to matter to something bigger than himself. And what about the woman? What does she want? The same thing, probably, which is why the store matters to both of them. Liam ran a hand through his hair. See? It's a mess. It's not a mess. It's just not outlined yet. Eleanor grinned. Want to know a secret? My first drafts are all disasters. Every single one. But that's what revision is for. Finding the heart of the story and clearing away everything that doesn't serve it. You? Disaster drafts? I don't believe it. My editor has a whole file called Eleanor's Terrible First Attempts. She pulls them out whenever I'm being perfectionist about revisions. That's actually really comforting. Good. Now stop procrastinating and write the terrible first draft. You can't fix what doesn't exist. They were interrupted by Sage calling up the stairs about the books to sign. The next hour passed in a flurry of signatures, book recommendations, and customers who recognized Eleanor and wanted to chat about their favorite romance novels. Liam worked alongside Sage, handling purchases and suggesting titles with an ease that spoke of genuine love for the work. Lunch? He asked once the rush died down. I promised you soup. The Penny Clues Cafe was exactly the kind of place Eleanor never went in New York. Tiny, crowded, with mismatched chairs and menu items written on a chalkboard. But the soup was indeed amazing, and sitting across from Liam in the cozy chaos felt like being part of the city's rhythm. Can I ask you something? Liam said after they'd ordered. You've been asking me things all day. This one's different. He fidgeted with his spoon. Why romance? Of all the genres you could write, why that one? Eleanor considered the question. The easy answer is that I fell into it. Wrote one on a dare in college, it sold, and suddenly I had a career. And the hard answer? The hard answer is that I'm a control freak with abandonment issues who likes stories where love is guaranteed. She tried to make it sound like a joke, but Liam's expression stayed serious. Is it though? Guaranteed? In my books? Always. That's the promise of the genre. No matter how dark the moment, love wins. But not in life. No, not in life. She stirred her soup. My parents loved each other, but they loved their careers more. I've had relationships, but they always felt like like I was playing a part, being who I thought they wanted instead of who I was. So you write the love you wish existed. When you put it that way, it sounds pathetic. I think it sounds hopeful. You're putting love into the world even if you're not sure it exists for you. He reached across the table and touched her hand. That's brave, Eleanor. She stared at their joined hands. I don't feel brave. Brave people rarely do. The rest of lunch passed in lighter conversation. Favorite books, worst Christmas gifts received, debate over whether Die Hard counted as a Christmas movie. Liam said yes, Eleanor was horrified. But underneath the banter, Eleanor felt something shifting, deepening. After lunch, they walked through the city, Liam playing tour guide. He showed her the courthouse where couples lined up to get married, the vintage shop where he'd found his first edition collection, the park where they held summer concerts. Every place had a story, and Eleanor found herself imagining living here, being part of this community that Liam clearly loved. One more stop? He asked as the afternoon light began to fade. Lead on. He brought her to the waterfront, where Lake Champlain stretched out like a silver mirror. The Christmas lights from the marketplace reflected on the water, and a few hardy souls were ice skating on a rink set up near the shore. This is my thinking spot, he said, leading her to a bench. When the store feels overwhelming or the writing won't come, I sit here and watch the lake. It's beautiful. Eleanor. His voice had gone serious. I need to tell you something. Her heart stuttered. Okay. That wish I made yesterday, the one about being brave? He turned to face her fully. It was about you, about this. I've been trying to convince myself that what I'm feeling is just proximity, Christmas magic, the retreat atmosphere. But it's not. Liam, let me finish. Please. He took a breath. I know we started badly. I know you have a life in New York and a career that demands everything. I know this is probably the worst timing possible. But Eleanor, I haven't felt this way about anyone in, maybe ever. You're brilliant and difficult and funny, and you care so much about everything even when you pretend you don't. And I hope, you might feel something too. Eleanor sat frozen, her carefully constructed walls crumbling with each word. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Feel things without analyzing them. Want something without planning for it. I'm scared I'll ruin it by being me. I don't want you to be anyone else. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch feather light. I want the Eleanor who argues about plot structure and drinks too much coffee and pretends she doesn't believe in love while writing the most romantic stories I've ever read. That Eleanor is a mess. That Eleanor is perfect. He was so close now, and Eleanor felt herself leaning in, drawn by something stronger than gravity. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. The worst, he agreed. We'll probably regret it. Probably. Liam? Yeah? Stop talking. He kissed her as the sun set over Lake Champlain, as the Christmas lights blinked on one by one, as the world shifted and resettled into something new. It was a kiss that felt like a question and an answer all at once, like coming home and setting sail at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, Eleanor was breathless and Liam looked dazed. So, he said. So, she echoed. Was that okay? Instead of answering, she kissed him again, because sometimes actions were clearer than words, and because for once in her life, Eleanor Vance didn't want to analyze or plan or control. She just wanted to feel. They stayed by the lake until the cold drove them back to the car, holding hands like teenagers. The drive back to Pine Grove was quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet, full of possibility. What happens now? Eleanor asked as they pulled into the lodge's driveway. I don't know, Liam admitted, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to have it all figured out. That's very unlike me. I know, but maybe try it anyway? She squeezed his hand. Maybe I will. They lingered in the parking lot, neither wanting to break the spell of the day. Finally, Eleanor laughed. We're being ridiculous. We'll see each other at breakfast. 8 hours is a long time. You're impossible. You like impossible. I might, she conceded. One more kiss, quick and sweet, and then Eleanor was floating through the lodge to her room. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and for the first time in months, words poured out. Not her contracted novel, not a carefully plotted romance, but something new, something real, something that started, once upon a time. A woman who planned everything, kissed a man who made her forget all her plans, and the world didn't end. Instead, it began. Eleanor woke to her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand, which was odd because she hadn't had service since arriving at Pine Grove. She grabbed it, squinting at the screen, and her stomach dropped. 17 missed calls, 43 unread emails, 12 text messages in all caps from her editor. The Wi-Fi had apparently restored itself overnight, and the real world had come crashing back with a vengeance. She scrolled through the messages with growing dread. Her publisher had moved up the deadline for her Christmas novel. It was now due January 2nd, not March 1st as originally planned. The marketing department needed the manuscript for a special promotional opportunity. Margaret's messages grew increasingly frantic with each timestamp. When call me immediately. Eleanor, this is serious. The entire Christmas campaign depends on this book. And if we don't have a manuscript by January 2nd, we lose the placement. You know what that means for sales? Where are you? Eleanor's hands shook as she dialed Margaret's number. Finally! Her editor's voice was sharp with stress. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. I'm at the retreat. You know that. There's limited service. I don't care if you're on the moon, Eleanor. Did you get my messages about the deadline? Just now. Margaret, that's 2 weeks away. I can't possibly. You have to. Benchmark Books wants to do a massive Valentine's Day promotion featuring Christmas romances, love in any season, or something equally cheesy. But they need finished books by early January. This could mean placement in every airport bookstore in the country. Eleanor sank onto her bed. I haven't even started the book. What do you mean you haven't started? You've been at a writing retreat for a week. I've been working through some blocks. Well, work through them faster. I need an outline by tomorrow and at least 3 chapters by Friday. The full manuscript by the 2nd, no exceptions. Margaret, no exceptions, Eleanor. Your contract is very clear about deadline obligations, and frankly, after the delays on your last 2 books, the publisher is starting to ask questions about your reliability. The words hit like a slap. Eleanor had never missed a deadline before this year. She'd built her reputation on being dependable, professional, the author editors could count on. I'll figure it out, she said quietly. You'd better. And Eleanor, make it sparkle. We need Christmas magic, not literary fiction. Save the experimental stuff for after you've met your obligations. Margaret hung up, leaving Eleanor staring at her phone. Her laptop sat accusingly on the desk. The few paragraphs she'd written last night glowing on the screen. Beautiful paragraphs, alive with feeling and truth. Completely wrong for what her publisher wanted. A knock at her door made her jump. Eleanor, it's Liam. We were supposed to meet for breakfast? She'd forgotten. They'd made plans last night, giddy with new love and possibilities. That felt like a lifetime ago. Just a minute. She threw on a robe and opened the door to find Liam holding 2 cups of coffee, his face bright with an anticipation that made her chest ache. I know we said breakfast in the dining room, but I thought maybe we could watch the sunrise from the back porch first. He stopped, taking in her expression. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. She took one of the coffee cups with trembling hands. My publisher called. They've moved my deadline up. I have 2 weeks to write an entire Christmas novel. 2 weeks? That's impossible. It's not impossible. I've done it before. I need to focus. Lock myself in my room and write around the clock. She couldn't meet his eyes. Which means I can't. We can't. Hey. He set down his coffee and took her hands. It's okay. I understand deadlines. Do you? Because this isn't just a deadline, Liam. This is my career, my reputation, everything I've built. I know. I don't think you do. She pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. You run a bookstore because you love books. You teach these retreats because you enjoy it. You can afford to talk about authentic storytelling and following your heart Because you don't have a publisher breathing down your neck or readers expecting the next installment or contracts that define exactly what kind of happy ending you're allowed to write. His face had gone still. That's not fair, isn't it? You've spent this whole week talking about finding the true story, writing from the heart. But some of us don't have that luxury. Some of us have to write what sells. You're scared. Of course I'm scared. I'm about to lose everything I've worked for. No, you're scared of what happened yesterday, of feeling something real. And now you have an excuse to run back to your safe, controlled world where everything follows an outline. That's not. But she couldn't finish the denial because he was right. Part of her was relieved to have a reason to retreat, to rebuild her walls. Eleanor. His voice was gentle now. You don't have to push me away. I can help. We can figure this out together. How? Are you going to write my book for me? Are you going to explain to my publisher why I'm prioritizing my feelings over my contractual obligations? She laughed bitterly. This is exactly why I don't do this. Why I write about love instead of falling in it. Because real life doesn't care about perfect moments or magical kisses. Real life has deadlines and consequences. So that's it? One phone call and yesterday meant nothing? Yesterday was beautiful. But it was also a fantasy. A Christmas movie moment that doesn't translate to the real world. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I need to focus on my work. Alone. Liam stood there for a long moment, and Eleanor watched emotions flicker across his face. Hurt, anger, resignation. I guess I should have seen this coming, he said finally. You told me from the beginning you don't believe in the stories you write. Liam, no, you're right. This is the real world. And in the real world, people choose safety over possibility all the time. He turned to go, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're making a mistake. Not about the deadline. You should absolutely meet your obligations, but about doing it alone. About shutting out anything that doesn't fit your plan. After he left, Eleanor sat on her bed and tried to cry. But the tears wouldn't come. She'd become too good at controlling her emotions, at channeling everything into words on a page. She opened her laptop and stared at the blank document. 2 weeks. Approximately 80,000 words. That was 5,700 words a day if she wrote every single day, including Christmas. She could do this. She'd done it before. All she needed was the right formula, the right structure. Hero meets heroine. Conflict, resolution, happy ending. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Nothing. An hour passed. Then, 2. Eleanor tried every trick she knew, writing sprints, changing locations, using writing prompts, but every time she started typing, she heard Liam's voice talking about authentic storytelling, saw his face when he'd told her she was perfect exactly as she was. By noon, she had 3 pages of garbage and a growing sense of panic. She skipped lunch, skipped the afternoon workshop, ignored Holly's gentle knock asking if she was all right. Her phone buzzed. Margaret, outline? Eleanor typed back. Ooh, tomorrow, I promise. She tried to remember her usual process. Start with the tropes. Small town, check. Christmas setting? Obviously. Career woman who needs to learn the meaning of the season? That was practically required, but every scenario felt flat, recycled. She'd written this book 12 times already. How many ways could she rearrange the same elements? Another knock at her door. Eleanor? It's Ruth. I brought you a sandwich. Eleanor opened the door to find the older woman holding a tray. Holly's worried about you, dear. We all are. I'm fine. Just working. Ruth studied her with knowing eyes. Are you? Because you look like my daughter did during her dissertation defense. Terrified and trying to pretend everything was under control. I have a deadline, Eleanor said weakly. And that's why you're hiding in your room instead of using the energy of the group? Ruth set the tray on Eleanor's desk. You know, I was a teacher for 40 years. Want to know what I learned? What? The students who insisted on doing everything alone were usually the ones who needed help the most. She patted Eleanor's shoulder. That nice young man has been moping around all day. Whatever happened between you two, I hope you work it out. Life's too short for pride. After Ruth left, Eleanor ate the sandwich mechanically and returned to her laptop. The blank page mocked her. She pulled up one of her old manuscripts, looking for inspiration. The formula was all there. Meet cute in a Christmas tree lot. Heroine who'd lost her Christmas spirit. Hero who owned a failing family business. It had been a bestseller. It had also been written before she'd started questioning everything, before she'd met Liam, before she'd remembered what it felt like to want to write something true. Her phone rang. Margaret again. Just checking in. How's the outline coming? It's in progress. Eleanor, I need you to be honest with me. Can you do this or not? Because if not, I need to know now. We have other authors who could fill the slot. The threat was clear. Other authors who were younger, hungrier, more reliable. Authors who hadn't spent the last year struggling with writer's block and missed deadlines. I can do it, Eleanor said. Good. Because I went to bat for you with the publisher. I told them Eleanor Vance doesn't let us down. Don't make me a liar. The sun was setting by the time Eleanor admitted defeat. 6 hours of writing had produced 10 pages, none of them usable. She couldn't find the voice, couldn't make herself care about characters who felt like paper dolls. Another knock. This time she didn't answer. Eleanor, it's Holly. I'm leaving a dinner tray outside your door. Please eat something. She waited until Holly's footsteps faded before retrieving the tray. Along with the food was a note, Dear Eleanor, aim to remember that the best stories come from the heart. Whatever you're struggling with, trust yourself. You have all the magic you need. And to with love, and Holly, Solly P.S. S. Liam asked me to tell you the bookstore's writing nook is available if you need a change of scenery. Eleanor crumpled the note, then smoothed it out again. She looked at her laptop, at the pathetic word count at the bottom of the screen. What if she couldn't do this anymore? What if the well had simply run dry? What if Liam had been right, and she'd been painting by numbers for so long she'd forgotten how to really write? She closed her laptop and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the lodge, people were gathering for dinner, sharing their day's work, supporting each other. Liam was probably there, maybe telling someone else about authentic storytelling and brave choices. She'd chosen safety, so why did she feel like she'd lost everything? By December 23rd, Eleanor had written exactly 5,017 words of unusable garbage. She sat in the lodge's library at 3 a.m., surrounded by crumpled papers and empty coffee cups, her laptop screen blurring through exhausted tears. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. The retreat would end Christmas Day, and she had nothing. No outline, no chapters, no magical Christmas romance to save her career. Can't sleep? Eleanor looked up to find Ruth padding into the library in a quilted robe and slippers. What are you doing up? Eleanor asked. Old habits. I always wake up early on Christmas Eve. My husband used to joke it was my body's way of preparing for the holiday chaos. Ruth settled into the chair across from Eleanor. Though I think your reason for being awake is different than mine. I'm fine. Honey, you've been holed up for 3 days. You've missed every meal and workshop, and you look like you haven't slept in a week. Ruth leaned forward. What's really going on? Maybe it was exhaustion, or kindness in Ruth's voice, or the fact that Eleanor had hit rock bottom, but the whole story came pouring out. The deadline, the pressure, the inability to write, pushing Liam away. And the worst part, Eleanor finished, is that I know exactly what story I want to write. It's been brewing since I got here. But it's not what they want. It's not what will sell. It's not what my readers expect. What do you mean? Eleanor pulled up the file she'd been avoiding. Those few paragraphs she'd written after her day with Liam. This is what wants to be written. But it's too quiet, too real. There's no meet cute, no magical Christmas miracle. Just two people figuring out how to be brave. Ruth read in silence, then looked up with tears in her eyes. Oh, Eleanor, this is beautiful. It's not a Christmas romance, isn't it? Two people finding each other, choosing love over fear? That sounds like Christmas to me. My publisher won't see it that way. Maybe not. But what if you wrote it anyway? What if you chose the story that's true over the story that's safe? Then I lose my contract, my career, everything. Or you find something better, something real." Ruth reached over and squeezed Eleanor's hand. "Honey, I taught teenagers for 40 years. You know what I learned? The assignments completed out of fear were never as good as the ones written with passion, even if they didn't follow the rubric." After Ruth went back to bed, Eleanor sat staring at her two documents, the forced, formulaic attempt at her usual Christmas romance, and the luminous beginning of something true. She thought about Liam's bookstore, how he'd chosen meaning over money, about his mother crying over her books, about her own 12-year-old self, writing to freeze time and make everything perfect. When had she stopped trying to freeze time and started just meeting deadlines? Eleanor closed the forced manuscript and opened the real one. She began to type. As Sarah had made a career out of perfect endings, 27 romance novels, all with the same promise: love conquers all. She knew exactly how to craft a happily ever after, the precise moment for the first kiss, the perfect obstacle to overcome, the inevitable reunion that left readers sighing with satisfaction. What Sarah didn't know was how to write her own happy ending, or if she even believed in them anymore. The words flowed like water breaking through a dam. Eleanor wrote about Sarah's writer's block, her retreat to a small Vermont town, her prickly friendship with a frustrating man named Daniel, who ran a bookstore and had opinions about authentic storytelling. She wrote about walls breaking down slowly, about choosing vulnerability over safety, about the terror of wanting something you couldn't outline. She wrote about paper angels and broken snow globes and wishes tied to an ancient tree, about the difference between the love you write and the love you live, about two people who didn't fit the mold finding ways to fit each other. The sun was rising by the time Eleanor looked up, startled to find she'd written 40 pages, not her usual polished prose. This was raw, honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but it was alive in a way her writing hadn't been in years. Her phone buzzed. "Margaret? Outline? It's December 23rd, Eleanor." Eleanor stared at the message, then at her manuscript. She could still pivot, lock herself away for the next 10 days and force out something commercial. Meet her obligation, save her contract. Instead, she typed, "I need to tell you something." Before she could lose her nerve, she called. "Finally!" Margaret's voice was sharp. "I need that outline. I can't write that book." Silence. "Excuse me? I can't write another paint-by-numbers Christmas romance. I've been trying for days, and it's like squeezing water from a stone. But I am writing something different, something that matters." "Eleanor, we've discussed this. The publisher wants—" "I know what they want. But I can't give it to them. Not anymore." Eleanor took a breath.
Turn to Vance.
"I'll deal with the contract consequences, but I can't keep writing books that feel like lies. This is career suicide. You understand that, right? You're throwing away everything for some artistic crisis? Maybe. Or maybe I'm saving my career by remembering why I started writing in the first place. The retreat has gotten to you. You'll regret this when you're back in New York? I don't think I will." Eleanor looked out at the sunrise, painting the snow pink and gold. "Merry Christmas, Margaret." She hung up and immediately felt like she might throw up. What had she done? She'd just torpedoed her career, her financial security, her entire professional identity. But underneath the panic was something else. Relief. Freedom. The terrifying, exhilarating feeling of jumping without a net. She showered, changed, and ventured downstairs for the first time in days. The lodge was buzzing with Christmas Eve preparations. Garland was being refreshed, cookies baked, presents wrapped. The retreat participants were gathered in the main lounge, and conversation stopped when Eleanor appeared. "She lives," Marcus called out. "Eleanor!" Holly rushed over. "We've been so worried. Are you all right?" Eleanor paused, testing the truth of it. "I'm good. Better than good. I just quit my publisher and possibly destroyed my career, but I'm writing again. Really writing." "Oh, honey," Holly pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." Eleanor looked around the room, searching for one particular face. "Where's Liam?" The group exchanged glances. "He left yesterday," Ruth said gently. "Said he needed to check on the store before Christmas." "But Eleanor." "He waited. He kept hoping you'd come out." Eleanor's heart sank. Of course he'd left. She'd pushed him away, chosen her career over possibility. Why would he wait? Did he say anything else? "He left you something," Holly said. "It's in the gingerbread parlor." Eleanor found it on the mantel, a wrapped present with her name in Liam's careful handwriting. Inside was a leather journal, worn and soft, with a note tucked in the front, "Telenor, Selenor." This was my first writing journal, from when I thought I could change the world with words. I've been carrying it around for years, too scared to fill it with stories that might not live up to the promise of blank pages. And you were right. We can't fix what doesn't exist. So I'm giving it to you, hoping you'll be braver than I've been. Write the true story, Eleanor, even if it scares you. Especially if it scares you. And a bookstore's writing nook is still available if you need it. One word. Cinium, MPP-des. My mother wants to know if there will be a sequel to the December proposal. I told her to ask the author herself, if she ever comes back to Burlington. Eleanor clutched the journal, tears finally coming. She'd been so stupid, so scared. She'd done exactly what her characters always did, chosen fear over love, safety over possibility. But unlike her characters, she might not get a perfectly timed reunion. "Holly," she said, spinning around, "I need to get to Burlington. On Christmas Eve? Honey, that's necessary, essential, the most important thing I've ever done." Eleanor was already moving, plans forming. "Can I borrow a car? Is there a bus? I'll walk if I have to." "The van," Ruth said. "Take the retreat van. Holly has an extra set of keys." "But what about the Christmas Eve party?" Holly protested. "The cookie exchange? The candlelight reading?" "This is more important than cookies," Eleanor said. "This is about choosing the life I want instead of the life I planned." 20 minutes later, she was navigating snowy roads toward Burlington, Liam's journal beside her and her heart hammering with possibility. The weather was getting worse, snow falling thick and fast, but Eleanor didn't care. She'd driven through a blizzard to get to the retreat. She'd drive through another to get to Liam. Downtown Burlington was a chaos of last-minute shoppers when she finally arrived. The Book Nook's windows glowed warmly, the toy train still chugging between stacks of books. Eleanor parked illegally and ran for the door. The bells chimed as she burst in, wild-eyed and covered in snow. Sage looked up from the register. "Eleanor, what are you... Where's Liam?" "He's not here." "Left early too." Sage's eyes widened. "Oh my God, are you here to do a grand gesture? Like in your books?" "Where is he, Sage?" "His apartment. Above the store. Side entrance, green door." "But Eleanor..." Sage grinned. "Never mind. Just go. Run. Love is waiting." Eleanor ran, up the narrow stairs, heart pounding, everything she wanted to say jumbling in her mind. She knocked, pounded really, on the green door. Liam opened it wearing a flower-covered apron and looking shocked. "Eleanor, I'm an idiot," she said breathlessly. "What?" "I'm an idiot who chose fear over love and deadlines over possibility, and I quit my publisher this morning because I can't write lies anymore, when the truth is so much better." "Eleanor, let me finish, please." She clutched his journal. "You were right. I was scared. But not just of feeling something real. I was scared of wanting something I couldn't control, couldn't outline, couldn't guarantee would end happily. But you know what? I'm more scared of missing this, of missing you, of spending my life writing about love instead of living it." Liam was staring at her like she'd lost her mind, which honestly she might have. "Also," she continued, "I'm writing a new book, about us, sort of, fictionalized. But it's the truest thing I've ever written, and it might never sell, but I don't care because it's real and it's mine and..." He kissed her, right there in the doorway, with flour transferring from his apron to her coat, with snow melting in her hair, with her whole carefully planned life in shambles around her. "You quit your publisher?" he asked when they broke apart. "Technically, I'm probably fired. But yes, For me, no, for me, but also for us, for the possibility of us. She touched his face, leaving a smudge of flour. I love you. I know it's too fast and too much and completely inappropriate for a Hallmark movie, but I love you and I want to try, really try, even though I have no idea what comes next. Eleanor Vance doesn't know what comes next? Terrifying, right? Liberating, he corrected, pulling her inside. Come on, I'm making Christmas cookies and I need someone with functioning spatial reasoning skills to help with the decorating. Liam? Yeah? You love me too, right? I mean, I did just drive through a snowstorm and quit my job, so if you don't... Eleanor. He cupped her face in floury hands. I love you. I loved you when you were arguing about plot structure over gingerbread houses. I loved you when you hid in your room for 3 days. I loved you when you chose your career because that's who you are. Someone who takes her responsibilities seriously. And I love you now, covered in snow and talking too fast and choosing brave over safe. Oh, she felt tears threatening again. That's good then. Very good. They spent Christmas Eve making cookies, decorating his tiny apartment, and reading each other excerpts from their works in progress. Eleanor called Margaret to formally resign, then turned off her phone. The world could wait until after Christmas. That night, as snow fell soft outside and Burlington's lights twinkled below, Eleanor curled up with Liam on his couch and felt something she'd only ever written about, the perfect peace of being exactly where you belonged. Hey, she said, want to know something funny? What's that? This whole thing, meeting you, the retreat, choosing love over career. It's exactly the kind of story I always refused to write. Too unrealistic, too convenient. No reader would believe it. Good thing we're living it instead of writing it then, although. Eleanor sat up. I could write it. A meta-romance about a romance writer who falls in love while refusing to write romance. The irony alone would... Liam pulled her back down. Tomorrow. Write tomorrow. Tonight just be. I don't really do just be. I know. That's why I love you. And for once, Eleanor stopped planning, stopped analyzing, stopped trying to control the narrative. She just was. In Liam's arms, in a tiny apartment above a bookstore, in a snowstorm on Christmas Eve, she found her happy ending, or rather, her happy beginning, because the best stories she was learning were the ones that kept going after the end. I cannot believe you're making me do this again. Eleanor stood in the gingerbread parlor of Pine Grove Lodge, surveying the chaos of retreat participants attempting to build gingerbread houses. But this time, she wasn't a participant. She was the co-facilitator, teaching alongside Liam for the lodge's December Romance Writers Retreat. You love it, Liam said, piping icing with professional precision. Admit it, I love you. I tolerate gingerbread architecture. Same thing, a year. It had been a year since Eleanor had driven through a blizzard to this lodge, blocked and bitter, and convinced she'd lost her ability to write. Now she stood in the same room, published author of a different kind of book entirely, watching 20 romance writers struggle with royal icing and candy canes. Eleanor, one of the participants, a young writer named Jamie, waved her over. Is it true you wrote and finding the story in 10 days? 12 days, Eleanor corrected, joining their table. And it was a terrible first draft. The book you read went through 6 rounds of revision. But still, after everything that happened with your publisher, best thing that ever happened to me. Eleanor helped steady Jamie's collapsing roof. Sometimes you have to let go of who you think you're supposed to be, to become who you really are. Finding the Story had released 6 months ago to critical acclaim and respectable sales. Not bestseller numbers, Eleanor had been right about that, but the letters from readers were different, deeper. People wrote about seeing themselves in Sarah's journey, about finding courage to change their own lives. And Margaret she'd called last month to ask if Eleanor would consider writing another book for Benchmark. Something with your new voice, but maybe a little more. Commercial? Eleanor had politely declined. 5 minutes until judging, Holly announced, bustling through with her clipboard. Some things never changed. Holly still wore Christmas earrings, still radiated festive energy, still managed to make everyone feel like they'd come home. Nervous? Liam appeared at Eleanor's elbow. About gingerbread judging? About tonight. Tonight. The retreat's final evening, when Eleanor would read from her new manuscript, the one that scared her even more than finding the story had. Terrified, she admitted. Good. Your best writing comes from terror. That's a terrible motivational philosophy, but accurate. They'd worked out a rhythm over the past year. Eleanor kept her apartment in New York, but spent half her time in Burlington, writing in the bookstore's upstairs nook while Liam worked below. She'd learned to appreciate Vermont's seasons, Liam's terrible taste in movies, and the way Sage reorganized displays based on her mood. Liam had finished his novel, Sornti Inheritance, would release next fall from a small press that specialized in magical realism. Eleanor had read every draft, argued about every plot point, and cried at the ending every time. Okay, everyone, Holly clapped her hands. Let's see these masterpieces. The judging was deliberately silly, with categories like most likely to survive a blizzard and best use of gummy bears. Eleanor found herself genuinely laughing as she and Liam evaluated the entries, remembering her own disastrous first attempt. After dinner, the group gathered in the library for readings, the same library where Eleanor had broken down to Ruth a year ago. The same fireplace, the same comfortable chairs, but everything else had changed. Who wants to go first? Liam asked. The participants shared excerpts from their works in progress, vampire romances and second-chance love stories, small-town contemporaries and historical passion. Eleanor listened with professional interest but also genuine joy. These writers were chasing their dreams, putting their hearts on the page. Eleanor? Liam prompted. I believe you have something to share? She'd debated all week what to read. The safe choice would be a polished excerpt from her forthcoming novel. But sitting in this room where her life had changed, surrounded by writers taking risks, Eleanor chose brave. This is from something new, she said, opening her laptop. It's rough and probably too personal, and my agent doesn't even know I'm writing it. But this place deserves truth, so here goes. She began to read, When the second time I fell in love, I knew better. Senny knew that love wasn't a perfectly structured plot with guaranteed resolution. I knew it was messy and uncertain and required daily choices rather than grand gestures. I knew that happily ever after was really happily working on it forever. But I fell anyway. The excerpt followed two writers navigating their second year together. The negotiations of shared space, the challenge of supporting each other's work, the way love deepened and complicated with time. It was quiet and real and absolutely not commercial fiction. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Jamie started clapping, and the others joined in, and Eleanor felt that same cracking open she'd experienced a year ago. But this time, it didn't scare her. That was beautiful, Ruth said. She'd returned as a participant this year, working on a memoir about her teaching career. The kind of true that changes people. Later, as the evening wound down and participants drifted to their rooms, Eleanor and Liam walked out to the back porch. The same porch where they'd had their first real conversation, where she'd run from the feelings he stirred up. Full circle, Liam said, reading her thoughts. Except everything's different. Not everything. He pulled her close. I still think you're brilliant and difficult. You still overthink everything. We still argue about plot structure. Romantic. But now I get to love you while you're brilliant and difficult. And you let me. They stood quietly, watching snow fall in the porch light. Tomorrow, the retreat would end. They'd drive back to Burlington together, stop at the bookstore to relieve Sage, have dinner at the little cafe that did amazing soup. Normal life, but a normal Eleanor had never imagined wanting. Hey, she said, want to know what I wished for last year? At the tree, to find your true story? That's what I wrote. But what I really wished for? In my heart? She turned in his arms to face him. I wished for this. For us. For a life that surprised me. Did it come true? You tell me. He kissed her instead of answering, and Eleanor thought about the wishes dancing on that old oak tree. Some probably hadn't come true, but hers had, in ways she couldn't have outlined or planned. "I love you," she said when they broke apart, messily and imperfectly and without any idea what comes next. "I love you too," steadily and certainly, and with complete faith in our improvisation skills. "We should go inside. Early departure tomorrow. 5 more minutes?" "Always 5 more minutes with you." They stayed on the porch, wrapped in each other in winter quiet, as Pine Grove Lodge worked its magic on another set of dreamers inside. Eleanor thought about the romance she'd written here, not the failed commercial attempt, but the real story of two people choosing each other despite their fears. Maybe she'd never write another bestseller. Maybe her new quiet books would only reach a few thousand readers. Maybe she'd always struggle with the balance between art and commerce. But standing here with Liam, snow dusting their shoulders and their whole imperfect, unplotted future ahead of them, Eleanor knew she'd finally written herself into the right story. Not a perfect one. Those only existed in carefully crafted novels, but a true one. And that was better than any happy ending she could have imagined. "Ready?" Liam asked finally. "For what?" "Everything. Nothing. Whatever comes next." Eleanor thought about it, then smiled. "You know what? I actually am." They went inside together, leaving footprints in the new snow that would be covered by morning. But they'd be back next year, and the year after that. Some stories, Eleanor had learned, were worth telling again and again, and some love stories were worth living every single day. Even, especially, the ones you couldn't outline in advance. And so our story comes to a close, with Eleanor and Liam having found their happily ever after. Not the perfect, outlined kind from Eleanor's novels, but the real, lived-in kind that's so much better. I hope their journey has carried you gently toward peaceful sleep, wrapped in the warmth of Christmas magic and the comfort of knowing that love always finds a way. May your dreams tonight be filled with softly falling snow, twinkling lights, and the cozy feeling of being exactly where you belong. As you drift off to sleep, remember that every ending is also a beginning, and tomorrow holds its own possibilities for joy and wonder. Let Eleanor and Liam's story remind you that it's never too late to choose brave over safe, to write your own story, and to believe in the magic of unexpected love. Thank you for joining me tonight at Christmas Stories for Sleep. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to hear more tales of Christmas magic, winter romance, and heartwarming holiday moments designed to carry you peacefully into dreamland. Until next time, may your sleep be deep, your dreams be sweet, and your heart be filled with the gentle glow of Christmas all year round. Good night, sleep tight, and Merry Christmas.